Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. I am Kayode Okikiolu on the news this hour. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari joins other world leaders in commiserating with the people of Zimbabwe as he sends his heartfelt condolence on the death of former President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, who died at the age of 95. Nigeria's Special Envoy, Ambassador Ahmed Abubakar, begins shuttle diplomacy in South Africa. As Nigeria's emissary, he is expected to meet with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa to possibly carry out an impact assessment on the diplomatic tension between the two countries. The federal government set in motion plans to conclude 2020 budget proposal by the end of September. Now, how feasible is this plan? Find out on Lunchtime Politics as a budget expert joins us on the show. Welcome to the program. In the news this afternoon, President Muhammadu Buhari joins other world leaders in commiserating with the people of Zimbabwe as he sends his heartfelt condolence on the death of former Zimbabwean leader Robert Mugabe, who died at the age of 95 yesterday during a protracted illness. The late founding father of Zimbabwe spent 37 years in office as the country's president. Well, let's now bring you an update on the Nigerian government's response to attacks on Nigerians in South Africa. Well, the latest is coming from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who is offering legal funding to Nigerians in South Africa who wish to take up legal action against perpetrators of violence in that country. Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila also spoke about plans to seek compensation. Take a listen. Well, we'll bring you that statement in a moment. President Muhammadu Buhari's Special Envoy, Ambassador Ahmed Abubakar, has arrived in South Africa for a meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa, and this follows the recent spate of xenophobic attacks on foreign-owned businesses and some local ones. Well, the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Ahmed Abubakar, touched down at the OR Tambo International Airport, where he was received by the Nigerian High Commissioner, the Consul General, and other mission officials. The special envoy is expected to meet the host president in Pretoria, and that meeting should take place any moment from now. Well, let's now go back to our earlier story about the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who's offering Nigerians in South Africa that have been affected legal backing, as well as talks about possible compensation. Take a listen.
We did not provoke, nor do we deserve the violence that has been visited on our people in South Africa. We reject entirely the obvious attempt to change the true narrative of events by casting the recently organized acts of violence as merely internecine conflicts between gangs fighting for turf. We intend not only to determine the causes of these latest events, but also to assess and account for the losses in life and property that have occurred. This will allow the government to more accurately demand reparations to compensate our citizens who suffered in this recent orgy of violence. The House of Representatives is ready to authorize legal funding for those citizens who wish to take legal action against identified perpetrators of the violence, as well as those who sponsored them or permitted their actions to occur and continue.
Well, we have more on that story as the South African High Commission in Nigeria has shut down its offices and consulate in the country for fear of attack. Well, that's coming from South Africa's acting High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Bobby Moreau, who said he has directed the mission to suspend all consular activities until further notice. The office is currently being protected by security officers to avoid a breakdown of law and order. Mr. Moreau explains that the reported attacks on South African businesses in parts of the country informed the decision to close down the mission. The Commission also confirmed to Channels Television that none of its officials have left the country except for those on leave. The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Minister Muhammadu, had called on the residents of the nation's capital not to carry out retaliatory attacks on South African nationals and business interests in the FCT over the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in South Africa.
Nigeria spent billions. Nigeria brought students from South Africa and trained them at the expense of Nigerians. We need to remind them of this history. We need to hold them responsible. Good enough we are standing by the EU. The message is also that the EU should launch a probe into the human rights abuses in South Africa. The UN should wake up to its responsibility. The African Union should wake up to its responsibility. The South African government must be held accountable, must be held liable to the hundreds of lives that have been lost, to the millions of businesses that have been lost. Our people are entitled to protection in South Africa.
Yes.
Every Nigerian and African that has suffered any loss or losses should be compensated.
Yes.
Well, more reactions coming in. The All Progressives Congress is calling on the federal government to nationalize South African-owned businesses in the country, stating that it will send a strong message to the South African government. Addressing journalists after an emergency National Working Committee meeting in Abuja, the national chairman of the party, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, requests the revocation of licenses of banks which are owned by South Africans. Comrade Oshiomhole made the call following the deadly xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in the country. He is asking Nigerians to shun all goods and services of South African firms.
What we find completely unacceptable is that whereas South Africans have continued to benefit from the Nigeria business environment and repatriating billions of dollars to South Africa and other places of their choice, the South African authority appear envious of the many jobs and petty trading activities which some Nigerians and other black people are involved in South Africa. We will have enough to save for Nigeria by transferring these businesses to Nigerians and using whatever profit accruing from this process to rehabilitate those Nigerians whose property has been lost and attempt to provide some succor to those who have lost their loved ones.
Well, let's now get some real-time reactions to this issue. On one hand, we have the special envoy, which is in South Africa as we speak, and some of the issues that will be brought up. And then there's a talk about compensation. And at this moment, we're being joined by the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, Mr. Garba Abari. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. And via Skype is Mr. Benjamin Okoli, the President of Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this afternoon. Well, I'd like to begin with you, Mr. Benjamin Okoli. First of all, I'm sure you've seen the statement by the Foreign Affairs Minister of South Africa saying that there's no provision for compensation. And now we have the Speaker of the House of Representatives offering legal assistance to Nigerians who want to seek legal redress. And then he's saying that there will be talks about compensation. How do you react to those two different sides?
The association's reaction to that, our position is that we are going to press for compensations because we are currently putting the names of those who have lost their properties and possible lives and maybe limbs. We are trying to compile this list and we will make it official, and then we will go ahead to press charges, to ensure that compensations are paid to these people who are victims of this xenophobic attack. That is our position. And we support the call by the Nigerian government and by the Speaker of the Assembly on support to association, any other organ to do the press charges and ensure succeed in getting compensations for these affected victims.
Right. Now that Nigeria's special envoy is in South Africa, we understand there will be a meeting any moment from now with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. What are the resolutions you're hoping will come out of this discussion?
Yeah, we are hoping that there will be a complete cessation of hostility towards Nigerians by the locals who had, carried out these attacks, and possible continuation of these attacks in pocket, areas. In various areas that there might be flaring up now, here and there. So we think that the visit will provide, a cessation. The government of Nigeria having sent this high-profile envoy, and he is here presently. So we are very sure we will get negotiations and for Nigerians in general, a cessation of hostility.
Right. So let's move to Abuja and speak with Mr. Garba Abari. Now, at the onset of this, most recent attacks, I think one major issue Nigerians at home had was that they felt the government was not acting as fast and as decisive as they wanted. And as the nation's national orientation agency, is it that you didn't have enough information as to what the government was doing that put it out to people to know, or what exactly happened? Because a lot of people thought the government did not act fast enough.
I think government has acted fast enough because in situations like this, any responsible government will need to get all the facts fully aggregated, all the facts fully articulated before actions are being taken. From the time when the incidences started to the time when government acted, I think the government, within the facts available, within the context of the facts available to it, has acted fairly early enough.
All right. Now, also at the heart of this issue is the fact that a lot of Nigerians, leave the country, especially because they feel that the reality they have on ground could be better. And in fact, according to some statistics put out by Pew Research Center, it was a survey conducted last year. It says that nearly half of adults in Nigeria actually have plans to move outside the country within the next 5 years. I mean, that is worrisome. So how does that make you feel as the NOA? And what do you have to say to Nigerians who are contemplating that?
Well, first and foremost, the message has been the consistent messaging that the NOA had sent out to Nigerians, that our country actually facing challenges, yes, but these are not challenges that are peculiar to our country alone. Many of such challenges are actually global challenges. The challenges of climate change with their concomitant effects on the economy, the challenges of population explosion with their concomitant effects on blue and white collar jobs, the challenges of economic development, with few resources being chased by a large number or by the majority. I think by and large, our country offers all the prospects that every citizen would want to look out for. But to say that one cannot stop people, we cannot stop people from wanting to migrate out of the country because it is one of their own rights to do so. What we all keep saying is that whoever wants to leave this country should understand that there are ways, proper means, proper manners through which such migration can be effected. And therefore, whoever wants to leave the country, if it is actually for prosperity, is at liberty to do so. But it must be within accepted international norms and practices. Migrations are normal. If Nigerians, just as Nigerians are migrating to other parts of the world, other people are also migrating into Nigeria. So this is the reality of the human person.
Right. So I would like to ask Mr. Benjamin Okole about the current situation of things at this moment. I mean, that's something we keep asking from time to time. But we'll have to take a break at this moment. And we'll be back in a moment to discuss this, as well as a 2020 budget, which is already work in progress. We'll bring you the details in a moment. Stay with us. You're welcome back. Well, let's get back to the conversation. Mr. Garba Abari, the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, is still with us. He joins us from our Abuja studio. And all the way from South Africa via Skype, Mr. Benjamin Okoli. He is the President of Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, Mr. Benjamin Okoli, before we went on that break, I was going to ask you about the current atmosphere in South Africa. I think it's important that you bring us up to speed. What is it like there now?
Well, the situation is becoming a little gradually is coming back to normal, except for few flare-ups here and there. And in those places, they are in the locations where Nigerians are not predominant. We have very few Nigerians in those areas, and we have advised them to move back into the urban areas, so for their own safety. So I can say, that things are gradually returning back to normal.
Right.
Because the police have intensified patrol, and they are seen all over, every street and every corner. The police are there. So safe area, few pockets, flare-ups here and there in the locations.
So also, is there anything more you'd like the Nigerian government to do, in addition to some of the actions it has taken in this few days? Is there anything more you'd like the government to do for you and other Nigerians in South Africa?
Yes, the Nigerian government is doing well. They are doing, actually, we appreciate the move so far taken by the government, especially what the Consular General and the Ambassador, did in the past few days. It has been a very great effort they put there. We really appreciate them, and we continue to work and hope that the government will continue to put pressure on the South African government to ensure that this does not repeat itself. Right. Because it's totally an unwarranted attack on Nigerians and their means of livelihood. So at the time, our people begin to think that this is a sponsored, planned attack on us to disenfranchise us economically. Okay. So we just hope government will put pressure on them to stop this hostility towards us.
All right. Now, Mr. Garba Abari, just before we round off on this conversation, there's been this talk about nationalizing South African businesses in Nigeria. You're the National Orientation Agency, and I'm sure you have information about some of the policy directions of government. Is this something that the government might be considering?
Well, I think at the beginning of this issue, the crisis, the National Orientation Agency issued out a statement calling for calm, and also calling for Nigerians not to retaliate by way of reprisal, and to allow government to explore all means available to it in order to bring the situation to an end, and of course to ensure that the interests of our citizens in South Africa are adequately protected. There are ways and means, diplomatic and political, that are usually deployed when such matters come up. I'm sure within the political and the diplomatic channels available to government, and what we have seen so far with the steps taken by government, and which even the Nigerians in South Africa have attested to as to their viability and to their effectiveness. Right. I have a strong view that beyond what government has already done for now, right, if there are need, or if there is a need actually to go beyond what has been done, government would not hesitate to go forward. Okay, Mr. Garba Abari, thank you so much for your thoughts. We've been speaking with the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, Mr. Garba Abari from our Abuja studio, and Mr. Benjamin Okoli, the President of Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa. He joins us via Skype. Thank you so much for your thoughts.